Hello YouTube, I have a very important lesson to share with you guys today. A lesson that I learned at my expense because it could have gotten me severely injured and it also cost me months of progression. But to be able to tell that lesson accurately, I need to take you back a few months. So, as you can see from the thumbnail, that lesson concerns the deadlift. The deadlift is what I believe to be something that is quite essential for bodybuilders. If you want to develop your upper back, your posterior chain, you better do deadlifts. But of course, there is a way to go about it safely. And I have always prided myself on the safety of my deadlift form. I have never in my entire lifting journey gotten hurt doing deadlifts ever. And I believe that this is linked directly to my technique. My technique is quite pristine. I always make sure to utilize my legs and not my lower back. And I've always done my max to keep my technique clean. That was until, again, a few months ago, because what I'm showing to you right now is the way my deadlift was when I was still progressing fine. And as you can tell, the form is always the same. There's no deconstruction and it looks safe because it is. And my progression was fine back then. I was going steadily up in weight, the tonnage was going up, and everything was going swimmingly until I hit a wall. And that wall was the 485 deadlift. That's when things started to go really south for me because I was stuck at 485 for a long time and I did not understand what was going on. Because again, as I told you, the progression beforehand was just perfect. There was no plateaus, the weight was moving up every single time I would pull. And so it really felt like a sudden thing. It came out of nowhere and I couldn't understand it. My performance on top of that was all over the place. Sometimes 485 felt light, sometimes it didn't. Sometimes I could get 4 reps, no problem. Sometimes 2 reps was even a challenge. And on top of that, my recovery and the way my body felt was starting to be off. And I told you I never had any problems with the deadlift. And yet this time, sometimes I had a sore lower back. It just felt strange. It was a sensation I'd never experienced before. So what I did is I used my program and I went off the rails and I started focusing on other lower body lifts and I just pushed the deadlift to the side. I told myself, okay, it doesn't work right now. For some reason, you don't feel it. Just do something else and come back to it. Do a tonnage sacrifice. And so I did. But then eventually I returned to the deadlift to progress on my hip hinge. And what I found was that the situation had not changed. It still felt off. And yet I was still able to progress. I would still grind. I would still do my deadlifts. And of course, when you put in the effort, you get the results. The deadlift started to progress. Again, it was very slow compared to before, but I eventually made it to 485 for 5. And that is the marking of when I'm supposed to jump up in weight. This is the top range of my evolving rep range. And usually when I hit a PR, I like to record it and share it with you guys. And so I did. And what I found on that video terrified me because when I checked the footage of that 485 for 5, I saw myself pull and I couldn't believe my eyes. What you are seeing right now is this very segment that horrified me because look at that technique. Look at that garbage fucking form. When I saw that, I was traumatized. It was like someone had recorded like some clone of me deadlifting. I could not believe this was me. There was no way. My deadlift form was always perfect. What the fuck was that? I pull with all lower back. If you look at the technique, the hips shoot up immediately. The thoracic extension dies. There's no posterior chain engagement. It's what I would show people to tell them, okay, this is how you don't deadlift. This is a cat back deadlift. You will get hurt if you do that. And yet, there I was doing it. And from that footage again that you're watching, you can tell that from rep 1, something is wrong. Because it's not like the form is going like degrading as I go. It's bad from rep 1. From rep 1, I'm not using my hamstrings or glutes. I'm just using pure lower back. And I just, again, could not believe my eyes. Because at the moment when I would deadlift, it felt off. I told you it didn't feel right, but it didn't feel that bad. I would have never guessed that it looked like that. And clearly the footage showed that there was a problem, and I was flabbergasted. And so of course, what happens when you see yourself putting yourself in danger is you should change, right? You should change your ways. But of course, just like a lot of lifters out there, my ego got the best of me, because after the initial shock, the second thing I started to do is I started to cope. I started to tell myself, oh, it's not actually that bad of a technique. Like, it's a little bit of a rounded back. It's not the end of the world. Coming from me, it's fucking rich, because I'm the biggest hypocrite in this instant. I'm the guy who's always preached to keep a neutral spine, to be as vertical as possible when you pull. And there I am making excuses for myself because it's a PR I worked for months and I finally have it. And I didn't want to just ruin my happiness, because in that instant, I felt very happy that I got 485 for 5. And so I didn't want to actually have to tell myself that it sucked, that I needed to start again from anew. So what did I do? Well, again, as I just said, I made excuses for myself. It wasn't enough to see myself deadlift like this to make me tick. And so I also used all of the panoply of excuses that people use all the time to justify their shitty deadlift. Oh, it's just form degradation. Pulling with a lower back, rounding lower back is not that bad. Yada yada yada. Things that I've in the past spoke up against, that I still do think are garbage, but in that instant, my ego just make me deluded. I was completely delusional. And that lasted for a while, because that video I kept in my phone for a bunch of time because I felt bad about it. I couldn't get rid of it. A part of me knew that something was wrong. I couldn't delete that video. And eventually, because one day I wanted to upload a lift on my channel, I uploaded that very video. And when I did, I had to do one thing first. Before making it live, I had to copy paste a title from a different video because I'm lazy. And I just Googled natural hypertrophy deadlift, and I copy pasted just the title, and I changed the weight. But as I did that, the video auto-played. And what I saw just sent me into like a pit of hell. Because what I saw was the way I used to deadlift. And it was perfect. It was pristine. And then I had to look at the way I deadlifted now, at that garbage technique. And I couldn't make excuses for myself anymore. There was a clear problem. My form had went to shit. And yet, and this is something I want to insist on for this lesson, and yet, even when faced with all of these evidences, I could not for the life of me accept the fact that I was wrong. I just couldn't, and I know that it is a flaw. It is a deeply ingrained flaw within myself that I just couldn't face the truth, the reality of the situation. I preach objectiveness, but my subjectivity in this instant was winning me over. I knew something was wrong, but my ego was fighting back, and it was winning because I actually uploaded that video. But before uploading it, I needed to do one last thing. Before you guys could see it, I started to write a paragraph, and it was in the description, and that paragraph was me going on about how, oh yeah, I'm pulling with a rounded lower back, it's on purpose, don't worry guys, I don't really like it, I think I'm going to go back to the way I used to pull. All bullshit, okay? All of this was a lie, but I was still typing it happily, thinking, oh, they're going to just swallow it up, they're going to listen to whatever I have to say, right? And then it was time to actually publish that very video. And before I did that, something struck me. There's a part of me that woke up and was like, hey, you just spent 5 minutes writing a paragraph explaining to people why your technique isn't so bad. First off, what the fuck happened to you? I thought you didn't care about what people thought. Why did you try to explain yourself to your subscribers? And two, if you feel the need to explain that something is wrong and you try to preemptively safeguard yourself from criticism, then surely you know that something is wrong. And you are your own worst critique. So what are you doing essentially? You're trying to create a safe space for yourself because you know that you fucked up. And at that instant, my ego finally recognized that something was wrong. And I was able to just face the truth. A truth that was extremely uncomfortable, of course, because I had to admit that I had done something wrong, most likely for months. I had endangered myself, and it was all my fault. I couldn't blame a single other person. I couldn't blame form degradation or a natural curvature of the spine, whatever people who pull with that technique tell themselves. No, I had to face the facts. And it was tough. But in that instant, I realized one thing, that my form was now terrible. And I had to realize why. Because it didn't just happen, I had to realize why. So I deleted that video. I admonished myself for writing that paragraph lying to you guys. And then I started digging. So what happened? What caused it? Well, that's part 2 of the lesson. Beyond just surmounting my ego, I had to face the truth. And the truth was this. I slowly started to modify my technique as I went up in weight. The more weight I put on the bar, the more I would bend over. And you can see it in the footage I'm showing you right now. For some reason, I'm starting to put myself over the bar more and I'm less and less vertical. So how is that possible? I told myself at first, well, it's because the weight is getting heavier, so maybe you just can't handle that weight, but that would mean that I hadn't progressed on the deadlift for months. Like I hadn't put a single pound on the deadlift and I was forced to cut back it to be able to lift it. That made no sense to me. So I told myself, well, if that's not what's happening, what is happening? Well, I just told you, it was the technique. The technique has been different and it apparently made the lift tougher. Which begs the question, why did I do that? If it made the lift tougher, why exactly did I do that? Well, I think I found the answer. I think that what happened is that one day, for some reason, I bent over more on the deadlift. It made the lift tougher, but instead of telling myself, hey, it's tougher because you're bent over more, no, I told myself, well, the weight is getting tough, I might be reaching some sort of limit, this must mean that I need to use more lower back. And so guess what? Next time I showed up at the gym, I used more lower back and more and more and more. And the more I did it, the tougher it got. So in my brain, I told myself, well, yep, this is what's happening. Your progression is slowing down, it's getting tough now. But that's not what's happening at all. And yet you can see it in the footage. It didn't wait for the 485 deadlift to manifest. Look at 465, look at 475. I'm already starting to round my back because I'm bent over more over the bar, which means that all of that bullshit is because of me. I did all of that. It's not the weight, it's not the natural limit, it's not a plateau, it's me. I am my own plateau and you are as well. It's the reason why I'm sharing that with you. I can tell you that showing you that garbage deadlift is not something I wanted to do. It looks pathetic. I'm very ashamed of that video. But you know what? After I tried to share it with you and lie to you in the description, I realized one thing. I was ashamed of that very video. So this is why I started to sugarcoat it with lies. But after that, deleting that video would have been even worse. It would have been burying my shame. And I will not allow myself to do that. I'm going to use my poor performance and I'm going to use my mistake to help you guys so that you can learn that lesson from me. I paid the price, you're going to gain the benefits and I will not hide. I made that mistake, I poured like an idiot for months and this is the result. This is what I get and it's not going to be put into the shadows, it's going to be on my channel. It's not going anywhere. So this is it. This was the reason why I bent over more. And the worst part is that it started affecting other lifts. My snatch grip deadlift was starting to also suffer. I was too bent over, I pulled with all lower back. And man, I'm pathetic, aren't I? In an old snatch video, I just realized there's a video of me, I think it's the latest snatch deadlift I posted on the channel, where I put the same excuse in the description about, oh, it's rounding, but it's okay. No, it's not. It's never okay. And so, all of that culminated in that garbage form. And now I was with my back to the wall, right? Because I just proved to myself that I degraded my form just by a silly mistake that I let snowball, that created that situation that could have gotten me severely hurt again. And now I was at the point where my hypothesis needed to be tested. And there was really only way. it was to go back and deadlift with my old form and see what would happen. And so I did. Like not even a week later, I got back to the gym and I deadlifted again. And I wanted at that moment to hit 495 for 2 because it was the next step of my progression. So I should have been able to hit that weight. And I started to warm up. I don't have the warm up for you guys. I'm just going to show my old footage, but it looked like that. I did all of my lifts with the same old technique where I stood very vertical. And you know what happened? Every single warm-up felt like nothing. I couldn't fucking believe it. I don't swear a ton in my videos. You hear me swear a ton now. It's because I want to convey the mind fuck that I was in. I did not understand what was going on. The weights were flying up. Weights that I used to struggle with on my warm-ups were like nothing. And then I got to 495 for 2, which is an all-time PR for me. And before even pulling it, I knew it was going to go up like butter because 475 was didn't even register as a warm-up. So I go in front of the 495 and I pulled, and wouldn't you know it, it went up, no problem, with perfect technique, no rounding of the back, pure posterior chain. And you can see it in the footage too. I'm shaking my head because I'm like, did I just spend month and month pulling with a dangerous technique for nothing? Did I just sacrifice months of progression when I could have just stuck to the way I used to do it that was safer and better for progression? Is it really what's happening to me right now? And then I pull the second one and again flies up and I'm like, all right, what, like, this is it? This is the way I'm supposed to pull. And I can tell you that in that instant, I could have gotten 2 more reps easy. Because again, it felt like an empty bar. I was amazed. And on top of that, it felt right. It felt correct because I was deadlifting the way I was supposed to. And after that, to celebrate, I did like 4 sets with 425. Felt like nothing again. I was back to where I was supposed to be. A place that I took myself away from just because of my stupidity. Because I let myself, again, bend over more and create bad habits that I never tried to correct. That led me to just plateau forever. And now the plateau is broken. I'm very happy about it, of course. But more importantly, I want to share that with you guys because I want to prevent that from happening to you. Because if it could happen to someone like me, who's so conscientious and focused on good form, then surely it can happen to anyone. And I don't want that happening to any other person. And what I learned from this entire thing too is that bad or good form isn't really a matter of weaknesses or muscular imbalances or whatever. That plays a role. But the most important things are technique and intention. The reason why I pulled with a rounded lower back was not because I had weak abs or weak glutes. It was because I was starting too bent over and my intention was to just pull, you know, the grip and rip nonsense. Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking in that instant. Back in the days, my intention was grab the bar, pull the slack, stay vertical. That's it. And that led to good form. So when I restored these intentions back into my heart, guess what? The good form came back with it. Technique and intention are the most important thing that you can do. And the proof is in the pudding. A week before that 495 deadlift, I couldn't pull 485 without bending over like a noodle. I did 495, not even a week afterwards. I didn't do any corrective exercises. I didn't get any muscles. And yet, you look at the footage, you can tell that it's going up like butter and the form is corrected. Why? Because I changed my intention. So before you do all of these accessories, intention, number one, most important thing. Because poor form is a choice. I don't want to hear it, people saying, oh, it's just the way I'm built. Nonsense. Once you've picked a lift and you have managed to assess that it's a good lift for your biomechanics, if you can do your warm-up set with proper form, guess what? You can do all of your top sets with proper form. And if it degrades, it's not form degradation and it's normal. No, you're letting it degrade. So fix it before it breaks you, because I didn't get hurt doing that, but I very well could have. I pulled with a cat back deadlift, which is essentially a maximum load, for a month. I bless my lucky star that nothing bad happened to me. I'm lucky I'm very resilient in terms of lower back, but it could have happened and I got away with it, but a lot of you guys won't. You're poor with that technique and you're going to get snapped. And you know why you're poor with that technique? Because you're so focused on just getting the weight up that you don't care what it does to your body. And I see that a ton, especially with kids, teenagers who want to rush to like a 405 or a 500 deadlift. And so they're like, well, whatever happens, happens. I don't care about the technique. Great idea, genius. You're going to get a back injury and now you're out of the game and you're going to be one of these dudes who in their 20s is going to spout the lie of, oh, deadlifts are bad for your back. They're not bad for your back, they're bad for you. You are bad for your back. Deadlifts are amazing for the health of the lower back, but when you pull like an idiot, they're not. And a silver lining in this entire thing too is that it looked like it carried over because my body was like, all right, you pulled like a moron for months. You finally started pulling like a human again. It's easy. Like, of course it's easy. I pulled with what is essentially a disadvantageous position for months. And now I go back to better leverages. Of course it's going to fly up. Duh. But it's the same for you. Understand that there is not, and I insist on this, there is not a single human on earth for whom the lower back rounding is an advantageous position in the deadlift. Not one. For the upper back, yes, you can argue that yes, but the problem is that most people do not have the ability to pull with the rounded thoracic spine while maintaining a neutral lumbar spine. You just don't. Everything rounds and you end up doing what I call the fishing rod deadlift when your back is like this. You think you're pulling with your legs when you're like this? Genius? No, you're not. You're not. You're supposed to be like this. All right? Take that to heart, please. Don't do that mistake. If you're a bodybuilder, if you're a powerlifter, grip and rip, do whatever you want. Not my problem. If you're a bodybuilder, think about what you're doing to your body. Okay? You're not using your legs. You're locking your legs and then you're using all lower back to finish the lift. That is not the proper way to do so. Go back to do that 485 and burn it into your retina until you puke in a bucket from that garbage technique. But I want to make sure that you don't pull like this because I know I have a lot of guys on the channel who pull like this and they give themselves excuses because they think, well, if I have to have better form, I'm going to have to deload and I'm going to lose progression. No, you won't. Most likely it's going to be like me. You're going to find that a more neutral spine is going to carry over to the deadlift more. But the reason also why you won't do it, and why I won't do it either, I didn't do it, is because it's more painful at the bottom. Because when you stay vertical, the bottom is slower. It's harder to get the bar from the floor. And so people just bend over more to get that extra explosiveness of the floor. But look at what it does. Again, look at the 485 deadlift. Yeah, I could get the weight up, but at what price? It was not proper. And on top of that, you can tell that the grind is just not the way it's supposed to be. I would feel weird things in my core too. Like my core was like, all right, bud, I don't know what you're doing, but this is not what we used to do. We used to be a bridge. Now you're using me as some sort of like rope. I don't like that. And of course it doesn't like it. But I didn't get hurt as I said. And I lost simply progression. So I lost some time, but maybe it's going to help you avoid a similar fate. So be aware. Take videos of your technique if you want, if you have the possibility, please do it. Not all the time, but like once a month to see if everything is right. And be honest with yourself. I knew that my technique was going to shit. I knew it, but I lied to myself because I wanted to progress. I wanted to put weight on the bar. And then even when faced with the actual proof and evidence of my poor technique, I wouldn't accept it. I rejected the truth. And that could have led me to be severely injured. And so right now I learned my lesson, and I hope I'm not going to make that mistake again. I'm going to stay honest with myself and listen to my body and the way I feel. But it's not enough that I do it. I want you to do it too. And I want you to do it from the start. Don't do it like I did. Don't waste months just bullshitting your own self. Just face reality, face the truth, and correct it. Because if you don't, reality is going to correct itself and you're not gonna like it. And I'm going to leave you with that. Don't be an idiot like I am, signing out. Have a good night.